Hello, everyone, and welcome to Insights of a Headhunter. And today we have Niraj Kapur with us from Northern Ireland, and we will be talking about how to sell yourself during job interviews. And Niraj, for people who don't know, is a LinkedIn top voice in sales. He is also an author, TEDx speaker. He's also LinkedIn coach. So welcome, Niraj.
Tiina, it's always lovely seeing you. I met you in person for the first time last year at Uplift Live, which was amazing. And I'm getting a chance today to speak about sales and recruitment, which I don't really get a chance to do. I work with recruitment companies, but I don't really talk much about the recruitment world.
Yes, and it's one of my favorite topics, and it was somebody told me like you have this great book, Everyone Works in Sales, but that recruitment is all about sales, and which was a big surprise to me because I don't consider myself being somebody who works in sales, but then I realized we all work in sales, and it's a really important aspect.
It's true. Women like you who are intelligent and kind and well spoken don't think of themselves as working in sales. They just don't. But you do. You all work in sales.
And something what I've seen with when I coach, especially women for job interviews, um, they are really skilled, but they don't know how to sell themselves during the job interview. And I don't mean that you have to become salesy, but really how to do it in the best way without becoming salesy.
Yeah, I mean, women are much better at sales than they realize because towards the end of 2024 and definitely in 2025, the most important sales skills you can have, not just in recruitment, but on LinkedIn and everywhere else, are soft skills. And women have
Mm.
much better soft skills than men. So women are actually better at sales than what they realize. And whenever I work with women, because majority of my clients are women, and many of them are introvert, and many of them are extroverts, but they have imposter syndrome. And I always say to them, look, first of all, if sales makes you nervous, let's change the wording around because a simple change of words can make a big difference. So you're not selling to anybody, you're helping people. You're not selling to anybody, you're serving people. And once you sort of change those little
Mm.
words around, the difference it makes is incredible.
It really is the wording, because what I look at during job interviews is how this person would be in front of a client, either external client or internal client. So it's really not selling or hard selling something, but really being helpful to other people, and how it looks like.
Yes. And I think also not putting yourself down, which is a very common thing. So I was coaching Janet today and I was asking her, how's your day gone so far? And she mentioned everything that was bad. I said, okay, Janet, let's stop for a second, okay? Don't just, okay, what was good about your day? Let's start. And she told me all the, I said, okay, that's wonderful. You've told me so many good things. Why did you start with the bad for? Because out of habit, when you ask people how they are, they often start with the bad and not the good. So I think being self-aware of how you speak to yourself is one of the most important things you can do to build confidence and also to become better at sales as well.
Yeah. And I think there is also difference between the type of sales you do or during job interviews. If you are uh, opting for a manager position and you previously haven't worked as a manager, you have to do different kind of sales or interview. How would you help there, a client of yours?
Well, it's very important. I've sat on different sides of the equation here. So I spent 23 years in corporate London. So I know what it's like to hire people. And now that I have my own business, I have to hire suppliers. But also, there are certain clients I have a very close relationship with. And whenever they're hiring somebody, whether it's a board director or a sales director or HR manager or marketing director, I will always sit in on the final interview. Not the first ones, but I sit in on the final ones. Just because I bring a different perspective. That's all. And so I know what it's like. I'm probably at least once a week, I'm interviewing people either for my business or for my client's business. And one of the most important things to do is to speak your client's language. So the language you would use in IT is
Mm.
different to the language you would use in law. And the language you use in law is very different to the language you would use in accountancy. And accountancy is very different to pharma. And each industry has its own language. So first of all, it's important to understand that language and the phrases people use. And second of all, it's very important to understand the person you speak to. So I do executive coaching now with two CEOs, and we talk about legacy, we talk about market share, we talk about staff. When I speak to financial directors, I only speak to them about loss and profit, nothing else. Not legacy, not staff, it's profit and loss. When I speak to marketing people, it's about their marketing agenda and the ROI they have to get, either on the events they're running or on the email campaign. So you have to speak to the right language to the person you're speaking to, and you have to use the right industry phrases in the
Mm.
industries you are working in. And most people don't really understand that. They just do the same thing for each person, but it doesn't work that way.
Yes, and it's very what I see from I work with corporates, they are hiring people and then I come and help them as a headhunter. So they use a jargon that they use internally in the company that nobody else understands.
Mhm.
So sometimes even during job interviews they use the expressions that it's not understandable what they are talking about.
Yeah, when I'm with a corporation, say for example, and we're looking at a sales leader, I'll say to them, okay, what KPIs matter to you? You know, key performance
Mm,
indicators. Whereas when I'm an accountancy firm, a client of mine does accountancy, I will say what KPIs are important to you. I would say things like, how would you measure progress? Which is very different, but similar. You know, again, different kind of language. It's a softer language. You don't use words like KPIs with accountants. It's a different kind of language. And again, it's part of this is experience, and part of this is because I have to work across different sectors, and I have to learn different sectors very quickly to help my clients out. You know, my biggest client works in the furniture sector. If you came to my house, you would not think I had any knowledge of furniture because I have no idea. But for my client, I have to learn American furniture. I have to learn the difference between American and European furniture. I have to understand the costs. I have to understand deliveries. I have to understand all these things. It was so new to me, but you have to understand them. Otherwise, they're not going to hire you. They're going to hire somebody else.
and I think that's the beauty as well. As a headhunter, I always work in different industries as well. How quickly we have to understand who are the competitors, what are their pain points, and that's also when I present candidates from different industries, that they have to quickly learn about the industry, but also present the transferable skills that what they bring from other industries, that you don't necessarily have to come from pharma to work in pharma industry. You can
Oh,
bring,
absolutely.
yeah,
Last
value
September,
from
I went to San Francisco and I was hired by Salesforce to shoot videos on AI. Now, before then, if you look at my content, I rarely talk about AI because I'm not an AI expert. But when Salesforce asked me to go to San Francisco, I spent 6 weeks beforehand every day for 1 hour on ChatGPT, on Claude, reading books on AI, watching YouTube videos on AI, listening to podcasts on AI, subscribing to AI newsletters. I mean, I just absorbed myself in that world because I had to. And most people don't absorb themselves in the world. They might just read an article, but you really have to, I think people underestimate how much work is involved sometimes. And you have to understand that when you're looking for a role in recruitment or any kind of job, you're often competing against anywhere from 50 or 60 people up to 500. If you apply for a job on LinkedIn, you can be competing with 500 people. Okay. So, what is it about you that's going to stand out? What is it about you that's going to be different? And what are you going to bring to the table that nobody else is bringing? And not enough people think about that, Tina. What they do is they'll apply for this job and apply for that job and copy and paste and apply for that job. You can't do that. You have to be a bit more relevant, spend less time applying for jobs and spend more time applying for more relevant jobs and thinking, how can you be different and how can you help the person who's employing you?
I think that's really go deep in, and the quality. It's not a numbers game like they say. Yes, of course, if you don't apply for any jobs, then the number is 0. But thinking that if you apply for 500 jobs, sometimes I call to people to talk about the position. They don't have a clue which company it was, which position. So that doesn't give a very good first impression.
That's very, very true. But I know at the beginning we were talking about soft skills, and I made a little list here of some soft skills. So for me, when I'm interviewing people, I often find that most answers are available on Google. So it's very hard sometimes to know how good somebody is because most people can find answers on Google very easily. So what I like to look at an interview is what kind of questions are they asking me relevant to the position, because that's how you really understand people. You can tell a lot by somebody by the questions they ask. Most answers are found on Google. Most questions are not found on Google. So that's why questions are a really good indicator of someone's ability and someone's intelligence. So it's a great thing to do, is to be able to ask really great questions in interviews. The second great skill is don't talk too much. I see people talking far too much in interviews, far too fast, not giving enough time to breathe or have space or moments of silence. Silence is your friend. When I'm doing a sales presentation, I always have at least 2 or 3 moments where I just pause for 4 or 5 seconds, just to allow everybody to think about what I've said, especially when it comes to pricing. Same thing happens in an interview as well. When you talk, especially if you're talking for 40 to 50 seconds, it's okay just to pause for a few seconds to allow the other person to hear what you've said. And these are just really simple skills that are very effective, and yet so many people in interviews do not do them at all, but they're very effective sales skills.
Yeah, and what you said about, it's really important to really to listen, and stay focused, because I don't know any hiring managers who have all day to listen to your answers. You really have to be focused, come to the point. Nobody wants the fluffy answers. Like you like, don't go to the client afterwards with fluffy answers. We always want somebody who comes to the point quickly and moves on to the next subject.
The higher up you go, the more difficult it is as well. The 2 CEOs I coach, there's no small talk. I remember I said to Mark, one of the guys, how are you? He said, why? What are you, a doctor? No small talk. Get straight to the point. Don't mess about. Efficiency is everything. These people are so busy. And the CEOs, I don't deal with CEOs that often. I really don't. Most people I speak to are commercial directors, HR managers, marketing directors, business owners. But, twice a month, I work with CEOs. And the language is different. You think bigger. Time is of the essence. You cannot waste time. Don't do small talk. So, but again, you have to understand this when you're speaking to people. You can't talk to a CEO the way you would talk to your friend. It doesn't work like that.
Exactly. So, talking about friends, let's go over to the comments. We have joining us from, we have Jeff Young joining us.
Hey, Jeff.
Straight up. So he's here in the front row. He's always in the front row. Thank you so much for joining us, Jeff.
Lovely to see you, Jeff. Have you read Jeff's book, by the way?
Of course. And I have a signed copy as well. I have 2 copies.
I got mine from Amazon. I should have got a signed copy instead. But it's a very good book.
Yes. And he said the service mindset is a game changer. So really think about helping people or being of service instead of the salesy.
Oh, you can't even begin to imagine the difference it makes. a good example of a service mindset is after a job interview, people rarely say anything. Or now and again, they might send a thank you email. Nobody needs another email. I always take a thank you card. I got a bunch of thank you cards. I handwrite a thank you to the person. I make sure I mention something they talked about in the interview. And then I go to the post office and I post it. And that is one of the most effective strategies you can use. I use that in sales as well, of course, in prospecting. If I can't get hold of a client, the client hasn't given me an answer, I always will do a handwritten or a typed up letter signed. It works wonders because, again, most people don't do this. Most people do not get cards in the post. I've been doing this strategy now for, this is my 7th year in business. And it's still one of the, apart from lockdown, when it was very difficult, letters and thank you cards are still one of the most effective ways of doing sales. And again, it's a very gentle way of doing sales. And it's a very effective way because you get the person's attention, because none of my competition are doing this. None of them.
I know. I so often go to the post office because I know it works. Like nobody wants an email,
No.
but when you get a real postcard and I really make an effort to write in handwriting that people can also read. So this is not something that is AI generated or a pod. It's really, you see, it's personalized. So we have Christina Lambermont joining from Brussels. It's really important to create rapport between yourself and the person you're talking to.
Yeah, that's really true, Christina. Great point. And one fantastic way to build rapport is, before you have the interview, make sure you spend 5 to 10 minutes on their website and have a look at a news story or a recent blog they have done. Or just put the person or the company name into Google, because sometimes people will tweet before they put anything onto LinkedIn. Sometimes you'll find, sometimes they're not very active on LinkedIn, in which case you might find an article on a magazine, or you might find a video on YouTube. But just make sure you do that research, because if you can start a meeting saying, by the way, I read this, or I saw this, I was just reading this morning over a cup of coffee or breakfast. Again, it makes you different. And it makes you stand out. And most people don't do this. I get sold to every day. And only 1% of the time, people actually research me and go, I just bought one of your books, Niraj. I read it. Or I saw your TED Talk. I thought it was brilliant. Here's what I liked about it. Can you come to my networking event and give a talk? Now, networking events you don't get paid for. You know that. But if somebody's made the effort to watch my TED Talk, I will give them 5 minutes of my time on the phone to at least listen to what they have to say, because they have earned that right. But the problem is most people don't earn the right. They just are lazy. They send me a copy and paste email, or even worse, an AI generated email, and they try and sell. And the same thing goes in recruitment. You can't just do an AI generated email or a copy and paste email saying, have I got the job? Any news yet on the job? You have to be better than that.
Yeah, nobody wants the buy my stuff message. No.
I agree.
And we had another friend of ours joining from Texas.
Hey,
Jillian. Cheers. And she says that our self-talk is so important because that reflects our thoughts and what we will do afterwards. So
yeah, I learned that in therapy almost 4 years ago. I just gone through a very traumatic divorce. I had rebuilt my life. I was doing quite well. But every time I spoke with my wife, my therapist says, Niraj, your face changes. Your body language changes. You look so uncomfortable. And I realized I still had some trauma left. My marriage, my divorce, I was still dealing with some unhealed pain. And every time I talked about it, my body language changed. I came across a bit of negative energy. People pick up on that. That's why your self-talk is important. Nobody wants to hire anybody for a job that's negative, or who's a downer, or somebody who complains, or somebody who's got problems. When I hire from the job, I want to know you're going to do good work. You're going to bring a good attitude towards it. I don't want to deal with people's problems. So again, of course you deal with people's problems anyway, but in the interview stage, you want to come across better than that. And that's why knowing yourself and self-talk is so important. And that's why everybody, every night, here we go, before you go to bed, write in a gratitude journal for 5 minutes. Turn your phone off, turn the TV off. There you go. Write in a gratitude journal for 5 minutes and see how you write about yourself. And if you look back on it and it's all negative, you need to address it very seriously and go, okay, how can I make this better? Or if I've had a bad day, what 3 positives can I find? So I'll give you a good example. You know that 2 months ago I had a very serious car crash. A taxi driver drove into the back of me, and I spent 2 weeks out of work. I was on very serious painkillers, and I was in a tremendous physical pain. But mentally, I recovered within 24 hours because I was grateful Rachel looked after me. I am grateful, despite the fact it was a freezing cold January, I had heating in the house. I am very grateful I was able to order takeaway food every night and feed myself and feed the family, because normally I like to do a lot of the cooking. I am grateful that my parents were able to give me a call and say, how are you? Because a lot of people my age don't have parents. And despite the fact I was high on drugs from the doctor and very unwell, I was so positive because I had all these things in life I was grateful for, despite being in a car crash. So you have to look at the positives in every situation. And the fact is that you always achieve more in life and in job hunting when you have a positive mindset. These are just facts of life.
Exactly. And as soon as somebody starts bad mouthing their previous employer, I know I can't present this person. They need to, like you said, there is still some trauma or something that's not processed yet. You're not ready to be job hunting or going in front of a client. You need to deal with that first, and then we can talk about a new career
Exactly.
step.
I always like to ask people when we're about to hire them, tell me about a really terrible boss you had and how you dealt with it. And it's a really good question to ask at the interview stage, because you learn a lot about a person, Tiina. And if somebody just spends all their time criticizing their boss and putting them down, no matter how bad the boss was, I've had terrible bosses.
We all have.
Everybody has, but it's how you deal with it. I know that when I lost my job in the recession, I was very critical of my boss. I was very hurt they'd let me go, and they replaced me with 2 graduates just so they could save money. And I was really hurt because I was making good money for this company. And I was really hurt, and I didn't get the job interview, and I didn't understand why I was applying for jobs, not getting it. And the recruitment consultant said to me, the feedback was you were very negative. You were criticizing your boss too much. So there you go. That was a good lesson to learn. And from that day, I didn't criticize my boss. I said, here was a challenge we had, and here was how I overcame it. People in interviews love to hear about challenges and problems you've had in the workspace and how you've overcome it, rather than saying that person was a problem. You have to give solutions to problems. You can't just, I have a relationship with my assistant, who I work with, Nicola, my part-time assistant. Do not come to me ever with a problem. Come to me with a problem and tell me what your solution is. And
One of the solutions.
that way,
Yeah.
business is just easier and things move along much quicker. It also saves me time as well.
Yeah. We have a question from YouTube, from Ayman. I'm currently job searching, and after giving many interviews, I have lost the enthusiasm to describe my experience and my story. Any tips on this? I want to hear your version.
Okay. Well, look, I'm sorry you're struggling to find work at the moment. And please understand, it's very natural to lose your enthusiasm, because looking for a job after about 2 months can get very frustrating. And the longer you're out of work, the more frustrating it becomes. And that's completely natural. That's a human emotion. Okay. So what I do is I have a number of things. One is I have a file on my computer of testimonials from people I work with who have said lovely things about me, because it reminds me of my worth and my self-worth. That's the first thing. Second of all, I have a vision board where I know exactly what I want to achieve in my life. And those 2 things are very important, because your self-worth is so important. And the third thing is, I only learned this very recently, actually. Never let rejection lead to self-rejection. So if I'm pitching for a job, for example, and I don't get it, of course it's upsetting, but I don't think less of myself as a result. And a lot of people, when they don't get jobs, blame themselves. It's important to learn from the experience, but never put yourself down and never think you're less worthy as a person because you don't get a job.
I think you have a very good point there. And also, in my experience, it's even quicker. Like before COVID, when people were always used to going to the office, after 3 weeks, people were spending their days in pajamas, reading newspaper until what time of the day instead of job searching. So it goes so quickly. You really have to have a discipline, have an accountability partner, like a friend or a coach or someone, because it's very difficult to do it, and somebody who reminds you why you are great, to have this enthusiasm. But it's a
Brilliant
key.
advice. And you brought up a very good point there, which leads on to something else, which is it's okay to ask for help. Okay, asking for help is never a sign of weakness. In fact, asking for help is what smart people do. I ask for help all the time, and if I can't get that help, I'll pay for it. But I appreciate that when you're searching for a job interview, money might be a bit of a challenge, in which case it's not possible. But at the same time, it's okay to ask for help. And if somebody says no, ask somebody else. Okay.
And we have Marjolein joining us from Holland. Speak the language of your audience is so important.
Yeah, great to see you, Marilyn, and thank you so much for tuning in. Yes, the language you use is so important. Not enough people think about that. They really don't. And I think it's one of these things, it's very easy for me to sit here and give advice, but because I spent 30 years, it's my 31st year in business, my seventh year owning a business, but my 31st year in sales. So I've been on both sides. I've had to spend years looking for jobs, and then I spent years hiring people. And now, as a business owner, I have to hire suppliers. And like I said, I sit in on final interviews with two of my clients. So I know what that's like. So I'm doing this all the time. I'm always thinking about what people say and how they say it and the tone they say it in as well. It's very, very important.
It's so important. Today I was talking to a job seeker, and her voice of tone, I sent her a message afterwards that her parents have done such a good job, because just the way she's speaking, everyone would love to have her in the team. Like, if you have all the right skills, but the soft skills, that they really make you stand out, and how you communicate with others, that's really the important thing.
Exactly. Being able to pick up on things, on what people say, is very important. So we have a mutual friend. I won't mention his name publicly because he's a very, very private person, but I'll tell you his name afterwards. And he's moved into a new flat. And I asked him, how are you settling in? And he just said, people keep themselves to themselves. Nobody really talks to me. And most people would have gone, okay, hope it gets better. To me, I said to him, I'm sorry that's happening. Look, I know what it's like. After my divorce, I lived alone. Why don't I fly over and see you? And in 2 weeks' time, I've booked flights. I'm flying over to see him. And we're going to have breakfast together and spend time going for a walk. You'll see it on LinkedIn, so you'll know who I'm talking about. But just being able to pick up on things like that, it's a very human thing. And most people don't pick up on what people say. And also, people often don't pick up on what isn't said. So I'll give you a good example. If I'm doing business with somebody and I'm offering, say, LinkedIn training, and they say, we already have a LinkedIn trainer near us. I'm like, oh, what are they like? And I say, okay, that's great. What are they like? And the person goes, they're fine. Most people would go, okay, well, please keep me in mind. But I'll go, really? Just fine? And I'll question them and I'll question, but why? Don't you want someone very good? So you've got to be able to listen to the language and how people say things and how they communicate, because people don't always tell you their problems up front. People will often tell you a different version at first, and it's up to you to understand what they're saying and how they're saying it.
Yeah. It's like time is flying by. if you want to know more about Niraj, he has several books on Amazon. I just the last week I read Business Growth. It's a wonderful book, and it really encourages you to take action, but it also talks about self-care and networking, and it really gives you different perspectives of from someone who is investing so much in themselves, in coaching. I think for that money you get a lot of value if you can't afford Niraj as a coach or a speaker on your event. So where can people find you?
Three best places to find me. One is LinkedIn. That's easy. The other is to go to nirajkapur.com. Or
Yes.
if you're based in England, come and see me in Birmingham the 27th of March. I'm speaking at Uplift Live, which is the UK's only LinkedIn conference. And we have speakers from all over the world, from Australia, from the Caribbean, from America, all over the world coming to speak about LinkedIn. And I'll be speaking about sales and selling on LinkedIn as well. So there you can actually meet me in person and meet all these amazing people from around the world as well.
That's really wonderful. So anyone who is interested, send a personalized message to Niraj, and good luck on Uplift Live. Your speech will be great. And thank you everyone who joined us. Bye.
Always joy seeing you, Tiina. Take care.
Bye.